Hello and welcome to another lovely day here at Dunster House. We're going to show you just how simple it is to install one of our Dunster House log cabins. These two gents here are two Dunster House installers, directly employed, professional. They do this 5 days a week. They are the experts. And then finally we'll also be showing you how to put them on the roof shingles and how to apply the treatment. This is one of our Dunster House log cabin packs, and this is the pack that your log cabin will come to you in. It will arrive on the back of one of our own delivery vehicles. When the pack arrives, yourself and the driver will need to start unloading. To do so is very simple. Obviously, you cut the straps. The plastic comes off, plastic that's there to protect your log cabin. And as it comes off, you'll see the timbers underneath. As you open the pack, you'll find inside your instructions and component sheets. Make sure you find that and keep that safe. With the instructions found, you can finish unwrapping it and start unloading the timber. Inside the pack, there will be lots of bags of all the required screws and nails. Again, take them out, keep them safe to one side. You don't want to be putting them down somewhere as the timber's being offloaded and forget where you put them. As you offload with the aid of the driver, you'll be able to use your instruction manual to identify each individual piece of timber. As you look for the instruction manual, near the back you'll find a component sheet. And this component sheet will show you that we've included spare wallboards, spare floorboards, and spare roof boards. So if there is any piece of timber that's damaged for any particular reason, do not panic, you have some spares. Now, we've been installing log cabins at Dunster House for years, so we've learned a few tricks that we find make it just a little bit easier, and we're going to pass on those secrets to you. One of the things that we do when we're installing log cabins is we will use the component sheet to identify which log is which and where it's going in the log cabin as we're laying it out. That way we can lay the pieces of timber where they need to go. For example, here, the logs that are going to form the back of the log cabin have already been left at the back of the spot, ready so that as we're constructing it, they're straight to hand and can be put into place really quickly and easily. One of the things you'll notice at this stage is the quality of the timber. We use slow-grown spruce, which is a very tightly grained timber, and it also has less knots and less sap runs. It really is the best timber for this purpose. Now, these are the pressure-treated bearers that come with your log cabin. They're cut before they're treated to ensure that even the ends are sealed. We don't just buy a long length of timber and then cut it down to the right lengths. No, we actually cut it and then treat it to make sure that it's protected all the way around. Now, all of the bearers for all Dunster House log cabins come pre-drilled, ready to take the rapid pad foundation system. If we're not using rapid pads and you're going onto your own concrete base, that's fine, but it just makes it a little bit easier for those customers who are. The instruction manuals will come with a bearer layout plan. This will be a plan of how the bearers are to be laid out. They'll include detailed measurements of where each bearer meets the other, as you can see as we're marking out here. It's very important you follow the instructions in order to ensure that the bearers are underneath the cabin properly supporting the floor. The bearer layouts also describe where the rapid pads are going to be situated. This only acts as approximation right now, because what we're going to do is we're actually going to assemble the framework of the bearers, we're going to put it where it's going to be, and the pre-drilled holes are going to be our markers. They are going to tell us where the rapid pads will need to go. Pre-drill the holes for the nails that hold the bearers together, just to stop the timber splitting. Nail the bearers together through your pre-drilled holes using the nails provided. Once you've assembled the bearer frame, you've got to check that it's square. You do this very simply by measuring the two diagonals and making sure that the measurement is the same. Any adjustment, easy to do, just pull it into the right sort of shape. You'll end up needing to check the square several times throughout the construction process. Now we're using a rapid pad foundation system for this cabin, and we're going to use the bearers to mark out where the rapid pads are actually going to go. We're just using some scraps of wood and pushing them through the pre-drilled holes to mark the position. That's because it's particularly hard ground here. If it was softer ground, you could just push a nail in, or you could into the soil, or you could leave something there just to mark the position. Doesn't really matter. We're simply using these scraps of wood because we have them to hand. Once you've marked out the positions of the bearers and of the rapid pad positions, you can take away the bearers, leave them to one side, leaving your markers for where the rapid pads are going to go. Okay, the next stage is to take your markers away and lay the plastic grids down with the very, very centre where the marker was. Mark out the edge of the plastic grids with a shovel, or, well, in this case it's a scrap of timber, and you're marking out where you're going to dig. Now you only need to dig down perhaps 30 or 40 millimetres, and that's just the area where the plastic grid is then going to sit. Each pad is provided with 2 bolts, a long and a short. Try to use the short one whenever you can, but the long one is provided to give you a greater range of heights available on each pad, depending upon how uneven your garden may be. The pad is welded with a nut to it, and the bolt will screw into that. One of the 3 extra nuts, as you can see already on this bolt, is then used to tighten and secure the bolt against the plate. Don't have it protruding through, just have it flush with the back of the plate. The 2 remaining nuts, thank you, are then screwed down on top. And there is a plate included which sits on top for the bearer. You can then tighten the middle nut up against the top nut to lock it into place. A quick safety thing: if you find any of these are too tight going into the plate, whatever you do, don't try and over tighten it and force it with your hand, which can be very sharp. Wear some thick gloves if you're struggling to screw it in. As it happens, these are all going in really easily, so we haven't got to worry about it today. Once each grid has been dug down about 30 to 40 mil, the next thing you do is fill it with shingle. It's just ordinary garden gravel, but we provide it for you with the kit. About 1/4 to 1/5 of a bag per grid, and all you do is to smooth it down, filling up all of the holes on the plastic grid. The next thing, the plate sits on top. As you can see, it's got this little noggin which is going to hold it into place, and that will end up going just into one of the plastic holes and stop it moving around. Now we've taken the bearers and we've laid them back down onto our rapid pads, and we're lining up the pre-drilled holes with the bolt for the rapid pad. Now some of the pads you can see are a little bit out of line, so it's got a little bit of moving around, but we've dug the holes with a little bit of room and a little bit of space to allow us to make those adjustments. As I said before, every step of the way as you're doing the base, keep on checking that you're square by measuring those diagonals, right? And you can make adjustments if you're not. So you see measure 1. By holding the measurement, you can then just hold the tape measure, move round and check that the other diagonal is the same. And if it's not, are we right straight away? Yeah. Brilliant, first time. The next thing to do is check that it's level. And the way they do that is by lowering the nuts on all of the middle pads, so that the bearers are only being supported in the 4 corners. Once the bearers are only being supported in the 4 corners, they can adjust those 4 corners with a spirit level laid on top until it's all level amongst those corners. Then they can raise the nuts up again on the middle pads to support the base. Check your level on your 4 sides once you're finished. Any minor adjustment is very simple to do, just with the nuts on the rapid pad bolts. Make sure your 4 corners are level before you worry about tightening up the nuts on the central pads. Once you've got it all level, you can start adjusting the nuts on the middle ones. As this cabin was built on rapid pad foundations, you'll also get the structural insulation panels as well. These have 50mm of insulation as well as these battens. Now the rapid pads can take the weight. These battens built into the floor insulation help give the floor rigidity so that the whole floor is strong throughout. the battens will run in the opposite direction to the floor bearers. Like so. Now, this system that we do will be compatible for all of our different thicknesses of cabins. This one is a 28mm walls, but these panels also have to be capable of being fitted onto a 45mm cabin. So in this cabin, there would be approximately 20mm gap around the edges. On a 45mm cabin, it'd be much less, only a couple of mil. The instructions to tell you how to lay out all of your panels across the entire floor, and try and leave a mil or so gap in between each panel just to allow for expansion and contraction. Included with your kit will be a trim piece that's going to go here to cover this, because at no point in any Dunster household cabins do we ever leave any of this chipboard type substance showing. So if you find that trim and place it in at this stage, just to make sure you have left the appropriate gap. Okay, once you check you've got the gap, take it away. Don't leave it there for now. Take it away. The panels now screw down into the bearers. If you space them out properly, with that 20mm gap around the edge and a very small 1mm gap in the middle, screwing here, about sort of 15mm from the edge, you're going to go through into the bearer. Now the wall logs stack up in sequence. Obviously side walls, then the front and back walls, side walls, then the front and back walls. It's obviously quite common sense that therefore one of the logs is going to need to be what's called a half log. Now, exactly similar to a normal log, but cut in half. This is the only log that you're going to need to screw into the bearer. Now what we do is we're going to lay the first line of logs out with the half logs on the front and back and a full log on each side. And once that's done, we're going to screw the half logs only into the bearer. Now when the wall logs go down, you'll see they'll overhang about 70mm from the edge of the bearer. That's what you want. Now we've pre-drilled these holes to ensure the wood doesn't split. And again, very easy for you to do that as well. Now this, and one last screw right at the top of the walls once you're attaching the apexes, that's the only time you actually need to screw the wall logs into position. And now, with the first line of logs down, we have our logs laid out roughly where we need them, so they're straight to hand, quick and easy to grab as we're building the walls. We're now going to show you just how fast you can build up the cabin from this stage right up to the roof. Start the clock. Phew, that was quick. According to the camera clock, that was less than 10 minutes. So we'll see how accurate that is when we actually get to editing it. And now obviously we did a lot of preparation work. We had our logs ready, we pre-assembled our door frame, we unwrapped our windows, for example. Plus, we know what logs we're looking for. So for us, it was perhaps a little bit quicker than it would be for you. But still, if it's 10 minutes for us, imagine how quick it will be for you. Wow your neighbours with how fast your building skills are. We did have a minor problem at one point. One of the logs wasn't quite the right shape. You saw it down there. Had to swap it out for another one. Not a problem, it happens. Timber's a natural product. It twists, it warps sometimes with moisture. That's why Dunster House give you spares. So we still got a spare side log there and actually 2 spare wall logs at the back as well. So even if there'd been more than one log twisted, we'd have still been absolutely fine. So basically, if you do have any logs that are twisted, don't panic. Look for your spares. Next, we're going to put on the pre-assembled apexes. Now, these you see, they're actually 3 logs high. They're all on the angle for the roof. A lot of cabin companies, you'll find that these aren't actually pre-assembled. In fact, some of them are worse than they're just sort of face staple, big chunky staples on the outside to hold together, which you'll see. Ours are screwed together in a hidden method, so you won't see it unless you're looking directly down at the top of the logs, which you won't because the roof's there. Now, this particular design log cabin requires another log to go at the front, so we've unscrewed 2 of the screws at the top so that we can lift it up and we'll be able to place that log in the front there. Now these are our purlins. Now they're quite heavy, so I'm going to rest one end on the ground. The reason they're quite heavy is because we use very thick, chunky timber. Now that's for your benefit. One, it's a snow loading. If you go into the gallery on our website, you'll see lots of customer photos with 6 inches of snow on the roof, and you can see the cabin's there perfectly fine. The other benefit for you is when you're up on the roof doing your roofing material, it can take your weight. Even someone like me, if I'm very careful, because I'm a big guy. Benefits of our purlins as well, they're pre-notched, so they'll slide straight into place. They're also already at the right angle. So this one here is completely flat on the top. This one is going right at the high point, the ridge of the roof. Other purlins will have different angles on. So just pay attention to the angles as you put the purlins in, so you put the right one in the right place. The purlins are then screwed down through into the apex. And if you remember, this is only the second time during the construction of the walls we've actually had to screw anything. Moving inside the cabin, I'm going to give you a quick hint here and a check to do. Sometimes when you're building the walls of the cabin, they can bow out very slightly. The bearers will all be fine, but the walls may slightly bow out. The way to check whether or not this has happened is to take a floorboard, place it in the middle of the cabin, going the opposite direction to the bearers, and comparing the distance at the ends of the logs, if you do the same check at the back of the cabin. In this case, it's fine. But if it has happened, and if your walls have bowed out, just hit the bottom of the wall logs with a rubber mallet or something, just to bring them in slightly. And that's all. The weight of it, once they're in position, will hold them there. Storm braces are very important, and they're included with your kit. You fit them about 24 centimetres from the corner of the cabin, in all 4 corners. What you do, there's no need for there to be a gap at the top. You must make sure you leave a gap at the bottom. This is for the expansion and contraction. You drill through the brace, through the outside wall of the cabin to make your first hole. At the bottom, it's a groove, not a hole. So again, drill about in the middle. This makes the 2 holes. Push the bolts through from the outside, and then you can tighten up the bolts. A very important thing when you tighten the bolts into the storm brace is that you do not over tighten them. The one at the bottom of the groove, it must be able to move. It must be able to move to allow for the expansion and contraction of the timber. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to screw the door frame together. The door frame comes in 4 separate parts. If it's a double door or a single door, it still comes in 4 separate parts. Bottom, top, left and right piece. Now you'll see that the hinges are already on the door frame. The 4 pieces are also designed just to slot in together very, very simply, as you'll see in a second. As you see, the frame pieces are pre-notched just to slide together. And once that's done, simply screw them together. And that's your door frame constructed. You'll see that the door and window frames have this groove. This is so they slot over the wall logs into place very, very simply. Now a door frame already has the hinges pre-lined up. The 2 parts of the door can then hang on those hinges like so. Currently, the 2 doors aren't staying closed properly. To solve that, we need to bring them closer together. Easily done. Chris is now going to take the door off the frame, lifting off the hinges simply, and then we're going to adjust this hinge, so we're going to be basically unscrewing it to make it further away from the actual door. Do this on all of the hinges and it will bring the double doors closer together and mean that the lock engages properly. To glaze the doors and windows, lift the glass into place and then hammer the beads into place using the nails provided. Now this bead's a little bit tight, so we're just using a hammer to gently force it home. Now with it in place, they'll use the nails to pin the beads in. So the door's almost finished, but right now I can push on it and I can move it out of line. Now that's no good, that's going to stop the door working. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get it correct, Yep, yeah, check the top. And then we're going to screw it in through the frame into the log, about 3 logs up on both sides. Don't do it any higher, because you've got to allow the cabin to move, expand and contract with moisture over time. So don't do it any higher, or you'll find that those screws will end up holding up the cabin. Now with that in place, that door frame doesn't move out of line. This cabin here comes with Georgian bars. Lots of them in the range too. The Georgian bars are pre-notched and go together like so. You can then hold them in place. In fact, it might even hold itself if I'm lucky. Hey, brilliant. And then screw in with the short screws provided. Now, when you're treating your cabin, it's very important that you take these back off again, so you can treat the underside of the Georgian bar. It's going to get quite noisy here, so I'll have to speak up. We're starting to nail down the floorboards. So before we started, we've already put all the floorboards into the cabin with all the tongues and grooves facing the same direction. In this case, the groove part side of the board is facing towards the door, and we can now start nailing down using the nails provided. As we've got the structural installation panels, because it's a rapid pad base, we could actually nail the boards down wherever we felt like. We wouldn't have to do them in these lines, but that wouldn't be very pretty. So we're doing them neatly in these rows. When you don't have a rapid pad foundation, you don't have these structural insulation panels, you'll be following the lines of the bearer. So again, your nails will just be in neat lines across the floor. We've also put our trim piece in, the one that covers the top of the structural insulation panel, so you don't see that OSB. They're still carrying on doing the floor, so it's still very noisy. Okay, as we've nailed down the floor, we've left this gap, probably I'd say about 7 or 8 mil, nothing much, okay? You need to leave a gap, it's for expansion and contraction. It'll be the same gap on both sides. Doesn't look very attractive now, don't worry, there'll be a trim piece, kind of like a little skirting board, that we're going to use all the way around here, so you won't see this gap in the finished cabin. Once you finish the floor and you've got to the back, there's going to be a gap at the edge. Now, if it's sizable, because of the gaps you've left in the floorboards, you're going to need to take a floorboard, mark it, and cut a straight line across to mark the board that you need to cut to fill in that gap. You can use the spare floorboard we provide you with as a ruler just to mark the line. As it happens, probably by more than luck than judgment, as we've done it today, we have got so that they actually fill in perfectly, which is very, very good. Now, even though it fills in perfectly, as I said before, there's always a small gap around. And this is the skirting trim that we provide to cover that gap. Sits in place, we provide the nails. There's multiple pieces, so if one breaks or snaps, don't worry, there's lots and lots of spares. And they're oversized, so you'll need to measure out, mark with a pencil, and again cut, simple with a handsaw, to fill in the entire gap all the way around the cabin. Now these two guys do this every day, so they'll get through this really quickly. In total, we'd expect our guys to install one of these cabins in this setup in about 1 day, but that'll be at our premises in our garden. It will take a little bit longer to install at the customer site, mainly due to this travel time, how long it takes to get there. Now, to make installation easy for ourselves, we normally stack as many roof boards up as we can on the roof as we're going, so they're just to hand. You nail in using the nails provided. Sometimes you may have to hold the boards, force them into place as you nail them down. But that's perfectly understandable, wood is a natural product. As you can see, the very last roof board will not quite line up with the back of the purlin. There'll always be some sort of overhang or sort of slight short fall. But that's okay, because what we're going to do is we're going to cut down one of the full boards to make up that small little strip. Take a length of roof board, and with a pencil, mark where it crosses the two purlins. Then use another length of roof board as a ruler to draw a line along which you'll then have to cut. then simply use a handsaw to cut your roof log in half and make the required board to finish off the roof. Identify your roof edge board, and then between two of you, hold it in place and screw down through the roof boards with the screws provided. You may occasionally find that there's a small amount of excess hanging off. Not in this case you've got just the right length, and if there is, just simply take it off with a handsaw. If you've chosen our roof shingles option, for any of our cabins underneath 2.5 metres high, you'll see that we provided a roof membrane. This is just for extra peace of mind that your cabin will be weatherproof. The ease edging board screws into the roof edge trim. As you can see, you put that flap of roof membrane tucked underneath it. These fascia boards are the finishing touches for the roof of the cabin. They screw to this here, which is the rim base. And we'll show you where this goes in just a moment. Now, the optional extra roofing shingle that we provide comes in strips of 3, and that's to give it an attractive finish. It's thick, durable and hard wearing. Now, the first row that you lay down, you'll actually lay it the wrong way around, and it'll become clear why in a minute. You need to lay it with about 20mm hanging off the edge. One of the things that we found over the years, one of the shortcuts to save time, is to use one of the wind brace timbers. They're in your pack, they're about 20mm, not quite exactly, but by using that same piece of timber all the way along, it means that you've got the same distance overhang all the way along. The rest of the roof would all line up much, much easier. Nailing through the middle strip always. About 3 or 4 nails per shingle sheet. Now, each row of the shingles up needs to be offset. The easiest way to do that is actually just to cut the strip in half using a sharp knife, something that's going to get through the thick, durable roof shingle. Now, remember our first layer we laid the wrong way round, but now the second layer lays the right around, and because we cut it in half, it's offset as we'd want. Once again, you nail through the middle strip. Carry on now with full lengths, and the other half of that original shingle tile you should be able to use at the other end of the roof. Whatever you do, don't throw away any leftover shingles that you've got, because we're going to use them for the ridge along the middle. Now, this is the first row that we're doing, which is higher up than the rest of them. So you line up so the middle strip is just overlapping the top of the first strip. Then when you nail through the middle strip, you're going to be nailing through both this right line of shingles and the line of shingles below. And you see now, because the first row was not cut, it was the wrong way around, the second row was cut, makes it offset, and therefore the third row, you see now we're getting the tiled effect. And it's as simple as that. So now I'll leave these guys and they'll crack on within a very short space of time. We'll be up to the roof ridge. We use a 19mm roof board, which means these clout nails can go in anywhere. You haven't got to line them up with a purlin or anything like that. They're not long enough to go through and protrude through the roof of the cabin. Now, we nail through the central strip of these shingles, leaving the bottom half of the shingle overlapping onto the previous strip. Now, on the central strip, you'll see it has these dark patches. Now, these heat up in the sun and stick down the tiles, just as an extra level of weathering, you know, protecting against being blown off in the wind. to make the shingles for the roof ridge, you can take a whole row of shingles and cut them into these sort of triangle shapes, just like so. And that's how you make the shingles for the roof ridge. Once you get to the roof ridge, the two rows of shingles from each side simply overlap each other. And then for aesthetics, to finish it off, we're going to use the pieces of shingle we cut earlier, and we're going to nail them across the ridge. Now we've got another board here, we're using one of the spare floorboards as a ruler, just to make sure it's all nice and straight. Now once they're in, Tima's then going to show you where they're nailed through. See, the reason you do it into the front corners is because the front corner on the second one back is going to go through both. This is pretty much the only place you're going to find these clamp nails are visible, and don't worry, not even tall people like me can see it. Not from down there. Once you finish shingling your roof, take a sharp blade, like a Stanley knife, and just cut any of the excess shingle or membrane. It doesn't have to be a neat line, because you're about to cover it. Take your fascia board, which has already been attached to the windbrace, and line it up. You're lining it up so the edge of the fascia board lines up with the middle of this middle purlin. Once it's in place, we're then going to screw it in to the purlin through the front of the fascia board, as you see here. And we're also going to screw it down through the windbrace, lining up again with where the purlin is. Actually, one down through the windbrace. And again, do that on all four of the edges. And so that's how easy it is to construct a Dunster House log cabin. I'd like to thank my colleagues here for putting it up for us. And finally, the finishing touch. Now, as an optional extra, we can supply you with the treatment necessary to treat your cabin. We supply a microporous solvent-based treatment. Microporous means it breathes, which is needed for a timber product. Solvent-based means it's going to soak in slowly into the wood, which gives a much better coverage all round. And we supply you with enough for 2 coats. There's no need to worry about working out how many litres you need. We just simply supply you with enough. Now, as you see here, we're putting on very, very slowly, so we're only putting on a little bit at a time. This is because that's a much better way of doing it. If you just take your brush and you slap a lot on, it's not going to be very attractive. All the very, very pretty log cabins you see in our garden, we have taken our time and we have done those 2 coats and we've done the very, very thin coats. And that's what produces the best effect. When it comes to treating the windows and doors, remove the Georgian bars again, as you're going to need to treat these pieces separately. Treat these pieces of timber on all sides and leave them leaning up against something to dry. When you come to paint close to the glass, mask the glass with some masking tape, just to stop any treatment getting on that. If you do get the odd drip, don't worry, it should come out with some white spirit. And that's how you treat your cabin.